Dan, thank you for coming back on the Mindful Parenting Podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad I'm here. Thank you for having me.
And congratulations, their second edition of Wired for Love. That's amazing. That must feel
Thanks.
good.
It does. It feels good to correct things from 2012.
Oh yeah. There's a new intro from 2012. Yeah, I met. There's a lot has changed in the world since 2012. What did you have to correct to share for the listener?
Golly, when I wrote that, it was the second book, and it was very heteronormative. It only focused on dyadic relationships, not poly, not any other arrangements. And so I decided to put a chapter in, acknowledging that there are many different ways of organizing relationships and many different alternative ways to be in romantic relationships. And so I set about applying the theory to that, how the book could also be applied to that. Of course, it's still the book that it was, and it's still mostly dedicated to dyadic systems, in other words, two-person systems. But it is, it is sensitive to all the things that have changed since that book was written. And
Yeah.
also brought it up to date with my thinking, about structure, organization being primary, being really important.
What do you mean by that? Structural organization being primary.
That all unions, and a marital union or love union, follows the same kind of rules, have to be based on a centralized shared purpose and an idea of why that system exists, why that couple exists, or it won't last. So this is what we always do when we enter a free and fair union of equals, right? What's in it for us? Why are we doing it? What are the terms and conditions? So I can say deal or no deal. And unfortunately, couples are the only system that does not do that and goes in with a variety of ideas and expectations and fantasies and entitlements from family without any idea of why they're doing this other than love. And so they are going to fight because they haven't built this thing that they call a relationship, which is an invention of the mind, right? It's an invention. And so if you're going to invent something with your partner, you might as well do that consciously and make sure you're inventing the same thing. Otherwise, there's going to be trouble.
Yeah, I mean, we all go into our partnerships, and for this purposes of the Mindful Parenting Podcast, we'll talk about parenting partnerships,
Yeah.
and we have all kinds of assumptions, right, that are based on all kinds of things, from our own parents to Disney movies to what we learned in college to what we saw our friends do, and we're
Our
not
therapist.
really talking about all of these assumptions necessarily. I mean, hopefully we are, I guess. I mean, yeah, I definitely didn't make I'm not sure I explicitly said everything I was expecting for sure.
Nobody does. And now I do. And the people around me that like this idea, they do. But it's one of those things that people aren't prepared for, that they're basically setting up shop ostensibly for the rest of their lives, or even much of their lives. And so you would think that they would think about what's ahead and how they're going to get there and where are they going to go. Many people enter these unions with a no deal lingering somewhere. But because they wanted to get married and they already are sort of captured by the attachment system, they do it. And then it comes up, this deal breaker of a no deal, because they really didn't think about, is there a purpose for us? What is our purpose? Why do we exist? Who and what do we serve? And because those things aren't decided, people will always fight.
So for parents who are raising kids, should the purpose of their partnership be the purpose of raising kids, or should it be larger than that?
Good question. So let's say I put it out to a couple, and I say, what do you want as your absolute central organizing purpose, principle? What are you going to put at the very highest of priority? And that goes to, who and what do you serve first? And many say children. Others say work. Others say self, right? But many say children. And then I ask the question, what happens to the couple? And nobody seems to have that answer. Well, we're going to be parents. We're going to be great parents. Okay. What happens when the kids vacate, which they're going to eventually? Does the marriage fold because you two don't have anything anymore? You started it, right? This is your gig, right? This is your thing. And so what will happen? And nobody has effectively been able to answer that question. And so the only one that does make sense that I've vetted with people, and they can do anything they want, they just have to be able to defend why it's the best idea, is the relationship has to come first, because kids need happy parents. Happy parents, happy kids. If the parents aren't happy, they're not making each other happy, keeping each other safe and secure, if they aren't a good team, can they really manage everything that they're handling? Parents, kids, work, creativity, health, financial stability. How good are they going to be at that if they are fighting in the trenches and they are not able to work collaboratively? Everything will fail. And so if thought of this, and again, we're governed by ideas, right? Ideas, pictures, images. If you and I decide we're the top of the food chain, we are in charge of everyone and everything, then it makes sense that we have to, our goodness with each other has to come first. Otherwise, everything and everyone will suffer that we're leading, right? And so, again, this is a hierarchical, structural, tactical decision tree based on how are you going to serve everything and what must be at the top, right? And so that's how it's logically thought through.
Yeah, you can't, when the kids are dependent upon you, you're dependent on the relationship, the kids can't be at the top. It's topsy-turvy. We need to have a stable system. And in fact, in Wired for Love, you have a lot of arguments for like just being tethered to another person, for just like being attached. And you say the most powerful sustenance available to us is another person who's interested and cares. I think it's interesting kind of
And
to read.
and that we can depend on absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's just interesting. I think like now that, we're in this world where, ostensibly we could do anything without even leaving our house, and we don't need anybody, and we're all so isolated and things like that, and in the United States where we're so obsessed with independence and not leaning on anybody, and you talk about this idea of really advocating for attachment to another person and interdependence as well, and you talk about even needing attachment for survival. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like why is this so important? It's obviously at the top of the food chain for a couple, for parenting, but just for survival. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So Sir John Bowlby in the 50s and into the 60s talked about attachment as a biological theory, right? Not just a psychological one. So we could say a psychobiological theory. And that means that infants, unlike other mammals, are born without the ability to fend for themselves at all. They can't do anything. They are utterly dependent on the adult that hopefully exists after birth, right? And to protect them. So they're vulnerable. That attachment bond is what gives rise to the infant's sense of safety and security and counters failure to thrive. So from the very beginning, our lives depend on the gods that created us, right? The giants, right? They are everything. We do exactly what we think we're supposed to do based on what's offered and what's not offered, and we adapt. And that attachment system sticks throughout life. Most of the time with people, we get attached to puppies and dogs. We get attached to kittens. We get attached to our girlfriends in junior high or high school, or boyfriends. So the attachment system is often confused with love. And I don't believe that is actually it at all. I think it's a biological mandate that keeps us together, nature's glue. So we remain pack animals, herd animals, right? That tend to pair bond in herds. So we are absolutely interactive creatures. Without interacting, without being with others of the humankind, we tend to go a bit mad.
Sure.
And so if we're not interacting at all, we tend to go a bit mad. All of these things speak to the need for other people to be in our company or to be in their company in order to feel okay. This is true of pretty much everyone.
And I'd love for you to speak about the idea of this, I like this nature's glue so we can remain pack animals. It's so true. Keep us not so we don't go a little bit mad. But a lot of us are worried about, or a lot of people worry about like, oh, I don't want to be codependent. And can you tell us a little bit about the difference between interdependence and codependence?
Sure. So codependence was coined by basically Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where it started. It was co-alcoholic, then became codependent. And that namely was the person who gave up their own sense of self and rights in order to serve the alcoholic. In some way, they enabled the alcoholic. They were to their partner what alcohol was to the alcoholic. And therefore, it was a one-way deal. It was not symmetrical. It was not fair, right? It was not equal. Whereas interdependency means that you and I have the same things to gain and the same things to lose. Therefore, we are equals, share power, share authority, and we have to work together in a manner, if we want to stay together, that we believe is fair, just, and mutually sensitive, or we won't be friends. We won't get along. So that's interdependency. We have a level field. We have parity. Therefore, we're both mutual shareholders in this thing called a relationship and everything that follows, right? That's interdependency. Now, it's a shame that we have to make up new terms to counter old terms that have come to mean a lot of different things because of, the media co-opting of psychiatric and psychological and medical terms. And then social media using it as a cudgel to use against people, and that's not the intention. The intention isn't to divide people or otherize them. The intention is to understand.
Yeah.
But that often isn't true when people grab a hold of words like narcissism and codependency and borderline.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember that it's okay to be dependent on people. Like that's just our very nature. That's just how we work as humans to be able to do that. Now you mentioned we're equal stakeholders in this relationship, and in fact, it's interesting. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about maybe what are some of the agreements we should have. But it's interesting because as I was reading Wired for Love, I had a lovely day. I sat on the beach and I was like reading my Wired for Love and really enjoying it. But it's interesting because you were talking about in a section about older generations and how in a lot of older generations there's a different expectation of there isn't an expectation of equal sort of contribution to the relationship. Like women are doing all the emotional labor as well as all the household labor, and then I think there was some kind of term for like gray or white haired divorce or something where women
Gray
get
divorce.
Yeah. Where women get tired of this unspoken agreement that they may have made 40 or 50 years ago.
Especially.
Yeah, I was really thinking of my parents with this, and I've seen a few people, but things have changed now. Things are shifted and changed. What are some of the unspoken assumptions that we bring to our relationships that we think of as agreements that might not have been spoken aloud?
We organize by something called social contracts. And so explicit and implicit. And the social contract of old, of our parents, was one that was complementary. You're going to take care of the home, I'm going to take care of the money. And those roles were assumed to be the way things should be, right? So people weren't unhappy necessarily, all the people that weren't unhappy as it would be today if they had to assume those roles, right? Because the social contracts were different, the understanding, but we're no longer that. And that's been changing gradually, and now It is unrealistic to see one person's going to handle only the home and the other person's going to go away to work. We know that has problems. And, particularly the white male-dominated structure has been basically ubiquitous in everything, right? And so today, I think things have been changing. People are saying, no, equal power, equal authority, or go home, right? And that's what I mean by deal or no deal. So if partners are getting together, they have to decide ahead of time what is their roles? What are they going to do? How are they going to structure this? Are they pilots of the same airplane or two different airplanes, right? So to speak. How are they going to divide labor? How are they going to handle this or that or whatever in the future, right? And partners generally don't do that. Many do, but most don't. And some do, but only partially. They don't come up with how they're going to govern each other. And that's important because we're animals. We can do terrible things to each other if we feel like it. Or if we don't feel like it, we may not do things that we should do. And therefore, we need principles of how we're going to protect each other from each other, right? Again, this idea that love conquers all is a fantasy. It does not. First of all, everyone's definition of love is different, but also people have done a lot of bad things in the name of love. And so purpose, what are we going to do that we agree is either good or best or right? So say us both, right? We create the social structure. We create the rules. We create the ethos, right? Our relationship ethics, the culture. And that is something that I would love for our culture to teach young people who are embarking on relationships, that it's a union that also has to be based on a sense of purpose and maybe multiple purposes and vision so that they're pointing in the same direction.
So,
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, if I'm listening to this and I'm in a partnership, maybe I have a couple of small kids, and I'm thinking, ethics and purpose sound really lovely, Stan, but I'm not sure we've had the conversation about what do we do about the household chores and when, you say this, when you respond to our kids really aggressively and I don't like this, or when, when you spend this much money on this kind of thing where I would like to spend it on this other kind of thing. How do we go from this idea of like sort of principles and purpose and ethics to the nitty gritty of we're navigating our daily existence?
That's exactly what I'm saying. For all of those, do these partners have a policy?
So, for example,
they don't.
No, probably not.
No. So I'm going to pick at you because you're different than me, and I don't like your differences. I want you to do it my way. And you want me to do it your way, and we're going to fight. We have to remember we're very warlike creatures. It takes very little to set us off and to feel threatened, and to begin to speak only for ourselves. In other words, we tend to be pro-self under stress, not pro-relationship, and then we fight. That happens everywhere on the planet. It's happened since we appeared on the planet. Right? This is the human condition. So without policies, to just use that word, we're going to fight. What's the policy? What do we believe is the right thing for us for now? What do we think is best? Okay, it's unfair that I have to do all of this and you get to do that. Well, if our relationship wants to exist in the future, we have to take care of that stat. Otherwise, there will be trouble. There will be trouble. There'll be accruing of threat and resentment and injustice, and that's going to take the couple down sooner or later, probably sooner. And so we have to play fair and square. And the image I use is really of the three-legged race, right? Interdependence means that we're separate autonomous individuals, but we've decided to pair up and to join this union, this club, this group, this whatever it is, this alliance. Therefore, we have to work together or we don't make anything, we don't go anywhere, we can't make decisions, we're useless, period. And that's my point. Without creating purpose and rules, or I like principles, personally held principles, it's the Wild West, and it will always be the Wild West.
Okay, so we need to sit down and have these conversations. Dear listener, I invite you to think about what we talk about all the time here on the Mindful Parenting Podcast. Think about, instead of using judgment, practicing curiosity, using, your I statements, all of these different things. But you also talk about, when in Wired for Love, you describe beautifully, the need to kind of have these conversations, these purposes and things like that, but also some of the ways that we can get caught up. And you talk about the 3 styles of relating. And I was wondering if you could tell us about those 3 styles and where they come from.
Are you talking about the attachment styles, island, anchor, wave?
Yes.
Okay. those are more behavioral, and the terms have been changed to make it friendlier for people, because the actual terms may not sound very good. Avoidant, dismissive, derogating of attachment values on one side, ambivalent, angry, resistant, right, on the other side. And so when we study attachment, when we study personality development, I find it useful to divide these groups into either secure or, if we're talking about personality, healthfully neurotic, right? Right?
And I love the island, anchor, wave terminology. Right. I think that is really a wonderful way of putting it. They're such great metaphors.
I like them. But all it means is that if I really am insecurely attached, and I've been that way, I'm going to behave according to people in the clinging group pretty much all the time in a love relationship, or in the distancing group pretty much all the time in a love relationship. So it's based on a memory of adaptation from early childhood, and what is expected of me, and what I didn't get and what was never offered to me is going to appear in the adult if it hasn't been resolved in a good functioning relationship, secure functioning relationship, right? So that just adds an extra layer of predictability. If I'm in the clinging group, I'm going to be much more negativistic. I'm going to be more clinging.
So we're all on the same page. Can you tell us which one is the clinging group?
Wave.
Tell us, define the island, anchor, and wave for us. Thank you.
So the wave is a member of the clinging group. It's a clinging defense brought about by the thousands and thousands of interactions between the baby, the infant, and the caregiver, over and over again. When we study babies, we see how the babies adapt to the attachment orientation of the mother or the father or both, right? And we see those adaptations way early. Way early. So, for instance, in the wave baby gets preoccupied with the mother's attention, because the mother is there intensely a lot and then not there, but in the presence of, but gets annoyed by the clinging. So the caregiver at once rewards clinging and dependency, and at other times rejects it, and the child feels punished. The child wants to cling more. And the child does not know what it's going to get if it cries out, if it signals to the caregiver, right? So that child becomes ambivalent and very cautious, and stops grabbing things for themselves. They wait, right? They're babies in waiting, they're children in waiting, they're adults in waiting, which makes them very angry, because I will not make decisions as well myself. I will not lead. I will not grow up and own things for myself and deal with difficult people, right? I'm always at the mercy of that insecure attachment. This person will be here, and then they will be gone with me. They don't love me. They're not attracted to me, right? And so that's a behavior that comes out of training of a kind early in infancy. On the distancing side, the islands, these babies are raised, generally speaking, primarily by the primary attachment figure, by other avoidantly attached individuals who tend to put the self before relationship. So I like it if you were to just begin to be more independent before your time, before you're actually developmentally ready to. So I stress independence. I stress you being to yourself if you're not needed or wanted by me. But I do bring you out when I do need you, which creates a problem. So I'm being neglected on an attachment level. By that I mean face-to-face, skin-to-skin, eye-to-eye contact over extended periods. Also, being interested in that baby's mind. We need a caregiver who's resourced and interested in finding that mind, right? If those elements are somehow not fully developed in the caregiver, then the child begins to adapt and goes inside and begins to auto-regulate. That means self-soothe and self-stimulate as a mainstay of self-care. We all do that, but these children do it more than the average bear. And so I learn to not signal. I learn to not be needy. I learn to not be a problem. I learn to take care of myself. And I think it's independence, but it actually is an adaptation to a certain kind of neglect. And what's more troubling is that since I don't know what I never had, when I meet you and you have regular dependency needs, right, as a partner, I think you're crazy. I think you're too needy. I don't know what you're talking about. I never needed that. I never had that. I don't know what you're talking about, right? And so these people are at a disadvantage developmentally also because they're a little earlier, where they are absolutely pro-self and not pro-relationship. They are when they're not threatened, you see. So the distancing group, the islands, tend to distance, tend to think they're self-sufficient, tend to believe they don't need anything, are always afraid of being co-opted by someone else. In other words, told what to do, their freedom is, their wings are clipped, their freedom is taken away, their autonomy is taken away, and they're always looking for an exit. Because of that, because they never learned to engage with the primary attachment figure. Their only way of caring for themselves was to flee because they can't win in an engagement, right? So we have all these behaviors that are predictable based on a developmental trajectory that we observe with the infants, right? We can see that trajectory in a lot of the same behaviors that we saw in the strange situation. Was a method of Mary Ainsworth came up with for measuring infant attachment between 10 and 18 months, right? So that's all it is, basically. It's not a personality, but it is a way that I fear either being abandoned, rejected, punished, or being smothered, engulfed, and co-opted. Either of those two sides. And so I'm responding to those fears constantly. And because I respond to those fears defensively, my defenses always appear as threatening to another person. And then they, of course, do what I expect. They're going to smother me. They're going to run after me. They're going to leave me. They're going to get angry with me and pull back, right? Everything that I know is going to be reinforced.
Well, this sounds like a bleak picture
for
the listener, but I can definitely hear some of myself in some of these. Like, as you're kind of describing these different things, I know that I have like some places where I'm an anchor, I'm that secure attachment place, and some place where I have that distancing. My parents were very happy for me to be very independent as much as they could. But you're saying that in Wired for Love, you talk about these different behaviors from these different attachment styles as a way of understanding and
organizing, yeah.
Yeah, so that we can understand kind of why we kind of get into the sort of the same patterns with our parenting partner again and again. So we can then maybe understand them a little bit more. We can understand ourselves a little bit more and say, oh, here I go. I'm doing that thing again that I'm doing, or they're doing that thing again that they do because they were a little baby that was raised in a certain way. So I can have a little empathy, kind of from reading the purpose I see from behind all this is to really create more understanding and empathy for each other, right, in this partnership. That's what your aim is.
So you're recognizing that this is actually part of the human condition. We're all like this, right? In fact, we could say all of what we call pathology is an aspect of the human condition amplified by certain circumstances, environmental circumstances, right? Or endogenous, right? Inside genetic. But these are amplifications of what we all have. given the amount of stress that we would get into, we could manifest everything, right? So it is the human condition. It is normal. It is not a death sentence. It is welcome to the human primate. We're naturally this way, difficult. And so knowing is a way to understand oneself and to be able to understand how behavior affects another person. And if I'm constantly distancing from you, forcing you to be more clingy, I need to know that, because I may always blame others for why my relationships never work out. It's because I'm always distancing, and nobody's going to like that unless I find someone just like me, and many do.
I really enjoy in Wired for Love. You have these simple exercises like the welcome home ritual. Yes. Can you tell us about this and why it's important?
So, I don't know if you remember David Schnarch. But David Schnarch, a very famous therapist, couple therapist as well, passed away a few years ago. This is not a new invention, this idea of embracing the first thing before you start your day, or when you reunite with your primary partner. But this is a little bit different in that the emphasis is on the autonomic nervous system. So you come in from outside, I'm at home, we're going to be in different states. The reason we want to embrace, particularly belly to belly, because that's where serotonin receptors are, and that's also where we start to feel safe, is when the belly is protected because of all the organs there. When we go belly to belly and we hold each other and we don't let go until we feel the other partner relax, we're averaging out our states, right? We're averaging out the autonomic nervous system to a level that is similar, because state drives memory and state alters perception. So everything looks different, everything smells different. We don't see the house as terrible as we did when we walked in. In other words, instead of smacking into each other, two different states of mind and body, reunite. And just even for a minute or two, or hold eye gaze. And I'm looking at you and I'll say, relax your eyes, I can see you're thinking. And you'll say the same to me. And that'll do the same trick. And then go about your night, go about your day, and you tell for yourself, are things better? I believe they are going to be better. Does it work?
I'll try it. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's a wonderful practice in the Plum Village mindfulness tradition called the 3-breath hug. And so it's very much belly to belly kind of breathing. And actually, it also reminds me of sometimes my husband and I, we would look at the dog, and like the dog gets massaged all day long. The dog gets pet constantly. We're always telling her she's a good girl. She's like gets all this. So we decided that we should treat each other at least as good as we treat the dog.
Well,
and so sometimes we'll be like, you're a good boy, good job. And he'll be like, good girl. It feels so good, though. It's wonderful.
You know why? Because you're co-regulating with the dog. Petting the dog and comforting the dog is comforting you also, right? It's going in both directions. Both directions. It's called co-regulation. And that's what we're built for. We are built to co-regulate as human primates. If only we would rely on that more as partners. We do in courtship, but not afterward, many, many times. And so co-regulation is how we roll, and that is through touch, vision. Those are the two big ones, actually, touch, vision, but also sound as well, prosody. The way we talk to each other can feel holding and comforting and regulate us, right? And that's the way it should be, except you're using a dog, yay dog, or a kitty, yay kitty, right? That is exactly what I'm talking about. And that's why you do the embrace, or you take each other to the bed like a decompression chamber, and you start petting each other. That'll work. Just shut up. Just don't talk about anything stressful. It'll work.
A lot of what I'm getting here is like, sometimes I say that like your relationship with your child is like a bank account, and that you need to put more deposits in than you are going to withdraw, right? And that your sort of overall point in a lot of ways is like this relationship needs deposits. It needs effort. Yes. It needs work for it to be giving you dividends down the line, right? This is something that we can't just set it and forget it. We have to pay into our relationships with this primary partner so that we can really, really be there for each other.
Well, the couple, if it accepts this idea, they are the energy source. They are the center of the universe. They co-regulate in order to resource each other so they can deal with the slings and arrows of life, including the children. It's a hard job, parenting, and no matter what, hard job. And it puts a lot of stress load on the couple. Therefore, they have to make time for themselves. They have to be able to co-regulate under the stress, do less of dividing and conquering, right? But work together in this project, which is to make good human beings, right? Good neighbors, good citizens, good people, right? That's hopefully their project. And that takes a lot of energy. So where are they going to get the energy from? Not from the kids. Maybe a little bit, but no. You're not. You're going to innovate it from the kids. Only adult partners can actually resource each other in the way I'm talking about, and they must make use of that.
Yeah, and there is so much work there. As someone very similar to you said a while ago on my podcast, parenting is theater, and that we are doing a lot of modeling.
Who said that? That's wrong. That's my line. Who said that? I'm going to sue. Parenting is theater. Parenting is theater. Show, not tell. You and I are the exemplars. We're the petri dish, or our home is a petri dish of society, right? And if you and I aren't good at this relationship, they're not going to be good, right? They're not going to be as good because they're watching. So our humility, our ability to fall on our swords when we're wrong, all of that has to be witnessed, not only to each other in front of kids, but also to them, so that they begin to learn what it is to be or to deal with a difficult person or persons under difficult circumstances, right? And so the couple must have its act together. That has to be the real deal, which is why I emphasize happy couple.
Well, I wish we had all the time in the world to speak, but we don't. I loved talking to you, and I love your work. And everyone can get Wired for Love in the second edition anywhere books are sold. Is there anything we missed talking about that you want to share with the listener before we wrap up?
Really take seriously this idea that all unions across time have always been predicated on a shared sense of purpose. Why are we doing this, right? Is it to stay alive against the forces outside of us? Or is it to make money doing this project? Or is it to be successful at the Olympics, if you're my skating partner? That flattens differences. That makes us focused on things that we create and work together collaboratively and cooperatively. When we don't have those things, we turn on each other. And there's evidence for that today. Any system that does not have a guiding sense of purpose and vision will start to create a civil problem, right? A civil war. We need to be joined together with where we are the same and where we agree, or we will focus only on where we're different and where we disagree. That's the human condition. That's lazy, but that's all of us. So build something.
So find your purpose. Yeah, you're making me think about my husband and I, and I think it's okay. It's pretty good. It's there. Stan, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to talk to you again. Again, Wired for Love is out. It's an incredible book. Everyone should get it. And I've really appreciated you sharing your time with us once more on the Mindful Parenting podcast. And it's been lovely. Thank you.